from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up on Ag Day, Washington weighing in on the president's push for new tariffs, plus optimism ticks up in farm country, and agribusiness, a wheat market wild card.
It's dry. It is really dry, and that's a real problem.
An update on the fruit and vegetable industry on the Packer TV, and racing toward healthy eating.
Ag Day, brought to you by the Chevy Silverado, the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickups on the road.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Leaders in Congress are calling on the president to rethink his broad approach to potential new tariffs on steel and aluminum. House Speaker Paul Ryan speaking out against blanket tariffs. He says he's encouraged the White House may reconsider and urges the president to take a more surgical approach on China and other countries. The speaker has been outspoken in his criticism of the plan ahead of a final decision.
There is clearly abuse occurring. Clearly, there is overcapacity, dumping, and transshipping of steel and aluminum by some countries, particularly China. But I think the smarter way to go is to make it more surgical and more targeted.
Ag groups are hoping to avoid retaliatory tariffs on the industry following the president's pledge to implement across-the-board increases of 25% on steel and 10% on aluminum. But despite uncertainty in agriculture right now stemming from the president's threat of tariffs, most farmers seem optimistic about trade. The monthly Purdue CME Ag Barometer asked farmers about trade and NAFTA in particular. In the February survey, ag producers remain optimistic that U.S. ag exports will remain strong over the next 5 years. 87% expect exports to either remain about the same or increase.
A lot of uncertainty about NAFTA. Despite that, farmers remain optimistic about trade growing over time, and that's despite the fact that Canada and Mexico are two of our largest ag trading partners.
The survey was conducted prior to the president's announcement regarding the tariffs, so we don't know if or how the farmer responses would change. Now, as far as the overall sentiment, the barometer climbed higher for the second straight month at 140. It's the second highest level in more than 2 years of data collection. Some of that uncertainty falling on the renegotiation of NAFTA. The latest round of negotiations wrapping up in Mexico City this week. U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer says only 6 of 30 chapters have been completed. While progress is being made, Lighthizer stresses time is running short. Mexico has elections this summer and the U.S. has its own midterm cycle in November. He says in order for the current Congress to consider the renegotiations, an agreement must be made soon. Now, also in Washington, plans are moving forward on a possible fix for Section 199A and the new tax law. Experts say the wording favors co-ops over private grain buyers, but getting it changed has proven challenging. Tyne Morgan reports.
For agriculture, assuming Section 199A gets changed to what we think it might end up being, I'd give it a B+.
It's Section 199A creating uncertainty. The new tax provision gives a 20% tax deduction to a farmer selling goods to a cooperative rather than a private elevator, a line item that was added last minute.
And because of that, it really wasn't vetted as well as it maybe should have been there at the very end of the tax bills.
And now Section 199A is creating controversy.
That's the problem. They overdid it.
Private grain buyers are upset, saying Section 199A puts them at a disadvantage, as now more farmers are selling goods to co-ops.
So because of that, the privates got together. They've gotten together with the senators that sort of helped crafted it, and they've gone and said, okay, we need to sort of get this fixed.
Senators John Thune and John Hoeven authoring the last-minute Section 199A add-on. Nefer says Section 199A is a prime example of the law of unintended consequences, with the senators not realizing it would provide such a large tax deduction for crop farmers.
There shouldn't be unintended consequences. In the theory of tax policy, they overdid it. So now they're trying to find out the right middle ground, and there is in the problem, because the longer it stays that way, more and more of the ag co-op members are penciling out their taxes and finding out, wow, don't give it up.
It's those farmers who don't want to see Section 199A change.
The farmers who are members of co-ops like the language now.
Now private companies like ethanol producer Green Plains Renewable Energy are restructuring their business in order to become a co-op over fears they may not be able to source enough grain if Section 199A isn't fixed. But it's a fix that both Hoeven and Thune are trying to find. The bigger challenge, however, may be getting the new legislation passed.
the most likely vehicle is the funding bill by March the 23rd. That's almost maybe the last bill leaving the railroad, other than maybe the farm bill later this year. And that's why they better get it right.
Wiesmeyer says the pressure to find a fix is overwhelming from major lobbyists from companies like Cargill and ADM. But now it's a balancing act to make sure the change doesn't do more harm than good.
Don't make it detrimental to ag co-ops, and that's called a dilemma.
No matter the outcome, Niefer says 2017 should be the year of planning when it comes to the new tax law.
If we continue to have 199A and it's very favorable for farmers that deal with cooperatives, then that's super planning. So we either have regular planning or super planning, and even with the regular 199A, that's a huge advantage for a lot of our farmers to really take advantage of that.
And whether an advantage or a disadvantage, the industry waits for an answer from the uncertainty of Washington.
California snow surveyors trek through snow once again in the Sierra Nevada mountain range to get a manual assessment of the important snowpack. The measurement reveals a weekend snowstorm of up to 8 feet in spots really helped the water outlook for the state. The snow measurement at this one site hit 39% of average. Prior to the storm, it was 7% of average.
Accumulations of somewhere between 8 to 10 inches of snow water equivalent pretty much throughout the range. And that is a huge boost to what we had been seeing back last week before the storms hit.
That 8 to 10 inch water equivalent that Gerke mentioned refers to runoff. The mountain snows historically provide Californians with nearly a third of their water for the whole year. March is typically the last month of the rain and snow season in the state. It's not all wind and dry weather out there. Cindy Clausen's in the studio this morning and has a look at snow in today's Crop Comments. Good morning, Cindy.
Good morning, Clinton. Well, snow is blowing throughout the western Corn Belt. Matt Nelson is in Burt County, Nebraska, and he's in the middle of it. He says livestock are about as excited for this weather as he is. Our second picture is out of the cold and in the hog barn. Chrissy of Inwood, Iowa, sending us this picture of a happy boy and his pigs. She says her nephew likes to frequent the barn whenever he gets a chance. Well, as we take a look at our wind forecast today, much better than what we were seeing yesterday in the plains. The heavier winds are in the southeast as we head through the day today, but we're going to be seeing at least breezy conditions even all the way back into the plains. We're going to start getting pretty breezy in the northeast as well as we see another nor'easter moving through the area. That's a look at some of your national forecasts. I'm going to have the rest coming up in a few minutes, but for now, here are some hometown temps.
Ever wake up wondering what does today's weather have in store? Well, with weather updates, it delivers the local forecast right to your cell phone each morning to make preparing for the day easier. Just text Weather 6 to 31313 to get started.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk more about the wheat crop and wheat prices, plus see how vegetables can fuel your engine, so to speak.
Uh-oh.
In agribusiness, a mixed to mostly lower day in markets. Let's find out why from our friends on the floor.
Soybean market was mixed here on Tuesday, kind of an indecisive trade. In general, the market has trended sharply higher since bottoming in January. We've got some pretty severe weather problems in Argentina. A lot of the soybean crop there has been affected by drought and an ongoing drought. Very, very little rain here the last couple of months. This is one of the driest growing seasons since I believe the early 80s, if not the late 70s. So very, very dry in Argentina, and there will be pretty severe production losses there. That is the opinion of most traders. The question mark here is exports. Exports make up half the demand base, and they've been trailing the pace needed to hit USDA projections by a fairly wide margin. Anybody who's bearish the bean market will point to that statistic and tell you that exports are really lagging here, and we've got to play catch up in short order. The live cattle market traded both sides of unchanged here on Tuesday. Started the day higher, then reverted back lower, so kind of an indecisive type deal. We're back to a positive basis situation here. February futures are off the board, and the cash market is sitting well above nearby futures. Our nearby February futures trading near that 123 mark. We had cash trade last week near 126. Again, Joe Vac from CME Group here in Chicago.
We're here with Arlen Suderman, INTLFC Stone. Arlen, let's talk about the wheat market. We got some fresh numbers looking at, I guess you could call it quality of the crop, but right now a lot of places around the country just doesn't look good.
It really doesn't. Now, soft-red winter wheat crop finally got a drink, particularly in the Delta and South, and so we got some good moisture there. Plains, southeastern portions of Plains got some rain, but driest areas missed out. It's dry. It is really dry, and that's a real problem. The wheat's trying to break dormancy now. Temperatures are going up. The dust is starting to move. Farmers are facing some decisions here pretty quick. They're way behind on their top dressing and need to make some choices.
How long do we have? Is it a week? Do we even have that long before we have to decide what's going to happen here?
Oh, I think over the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
If it's still dry and the forecast is dry, the abandonment's going to start showing up.
Okay.
And there's obviously some wheat that's more marginal and maybe has some more hope that maybe last a little bit longer, but it's very concerning.
Are we in a weather market for wheat yet? Has that started? Are we beginning that?
Yeah, to get this kind of rally when you got a 9-month surplus of soft red winter and a 6-month surplus of a hard red winter, to get this kind of rally, it's a weather market. That means they go up fast and it can break fast too.
Okay. So as you sit back and watch this, where do you foresee, what are you looking at as far as wheat to move and how far?
Well, first of all, it's important to keep in mind that surplus of old crop that we have. So once all the facts have been traded, or what we know about it is traded, the funds figure it's over. We've had a lot of short covering that's given some momentum on the charts, but once they feel like there's nothing new to trade, they start looking for other markets to trade.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on it. Thank you so much, Arlen. We'll be back with more Ag Day in just a couple minutes.
Contact Arlen Suderman by email at arlen.suderman@intlfcstone.com. Ag Day, brought to you by Liberty Herbicide, the simply better solution for superior weed control and a stronger yield.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Cindy Clausen. As we look at the weather map, and Cindy, pretty much everything's moved out to the east.
It really has, and that's the main focus as we head through the next 24 hours is that storm system that's moving through, especially the northeastern United States. Let's take a look. And most of the activity that we're going to be seeing today is going to be with this low pressure system that's going to be some snow and even a little bit of rain to parts of the northeastern United States and even into the mid-Atlantic as that low starts to pull off to the east. High pressure in control of much of the nation's midsection. The low by tonight is then over into New England, but we're still going to see the snow coming on the backside of this. Even into the Great Lakes, we'll have some lake effect and lake enhancement there as well. As we head into the overnight hours Wednesday and into Thursday, we'll continue to see that low kind of retrograding. So almost going to do a circle. A system's going to start moving onshore across the west coast, but high pressure still having a strong hold over much of the plain states and down into the Four Corners region. Heading through the day on Thursday, that low continues to move back, so we'll continue to see that snow, especially for the central and eastern Great Lakes and on into the northeast. All right, over the past 24 hours, it really has been that system. The cold front, that has all been moving off to the east, but we're still going to see that moisture wrapping around that low pressure system that's going to be lingering. You'll see that precipitation starting with that system coming on shore along the west coast. As far as snowfall, we're going to continue to see that, especially with that nor'easter. Look at that snowfall really spreading. So this is going to be another problem for much of the northeastern United States. Now, as we take a look at temperatures, we're going to be in the 20s and 30s across a lot of the northern tier states. So definitely on the colder side today. Some 50s and 60s across most of the southern tier states, 70s far south, and 80 over in Phoenix. Heading into the overnight hours, we're going to see temperatures getting below zero in Bismarck. So some colder air in place, 20s and 30s across kind of the middle section of the United States, and we're going to be seeing mostly 40s south. And then as we get into tomorrow, temperatures in the 20s and 30s, Great Lakes and the eastern Corn Belt. We see some 50s and 60s as you get into the southern plains, 40s and 50s into the far northwest. As far as the jet stream, we've got a big trough in the eastern part of the United States, and that's why we're seeing that active weather there. Warmer weather out to the west. That trough will continue to push on off to the east. Watch as this big ridge builds in as we get into the latter part of the weekend and into the early part of next week, but notice a big trough will then follow that ridge. That's a look at your national forecast. Now let's check on the weather where you live. Kirtland, New Mexico, mostly sunny and warmer for you today with a high of 55 degrees. Hope, Arkansas, plenty of sunshine, a high temperature of 56 degrees. And Marathon, New York, colder with snow likely today and a high of 33.
All right, next from the Packer TV, concerns about tariff retaliation in the produce sector, plus a math lesson in the produce aisle.
AgDay, brought to you by Alivo Seed Treatment from Bayer. Protect your soybeans from SDS and nematodes this season.
In news from our partners at the Packer, the president's promise, or some say threat, for tariffs on steel and aluminum is sparking fears of a trade war, and the U.S. produce sector worries what that could mean to exports. Several countries have responded that they would hit the U.S. with tariffs on imports going into those countries like Canada. Now, Canada is the biggest shipper of steel to the U.S. It's also the top export market for U.S. fresh produce, taking in $1.8 billion of vegetables and $1.6 billion in fruit last year. Mexico imports about $500 million of U.S. fresh fruit annually. The Packer says Mexico, more than Canada, has demonstrated its willingness to retaliate against the fresh fruit industry when it's unhappy with the U.S. Now, back in 2009, Mexico levied a 45% tariff on U.S. fruit when the U.S. ended a pilot program that allowed Mexican truck drivers to operate in the U.S. Those tariffs were lifted 2 years later. And ordering a mushroom burger is not new, but the folks at Sonic Drive-In have taken that a step further. They're now offering what they call a signature slinger with chopped mushrooms mixed in with ground beef. Sonic claims this is a first for quick service restaurants on such a big scale. Now, speaking of scale, Sonic says the lineup of slingers are a healthier option, starting at 350 calories. A couple members of the Packer team did a taste test of the slingers. Check out the video at thepacker.com. Did your mom ever tell you not to play with your food at the supper table? Well, next, see why kids are encouraged to do just that.
AgDay, brought to you by the Enlist Weed Control System. More weed control, less drift and volatility, maximum yield potential. In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Tractors, hay tools, utility vehicles, mowers, and more. Visit KubotaUSA.com today.
It's what happens when you turn nutrition into something that moves. Tennessee 4-H includes a program where kids build lunchbox derby vehicles out of fruits and vegetables. In this report provided by UT, Charles Denny has more on what you can race and then eat.
Ladies and gentlemen, start your eggplant or a cucumber. Nutrition that's right on track. Welcome to the competitive world of lunchbox derby racing, part of this 4-H meeting in Alamo. But no spark plugs or carburetors here. When it comes to these vehicles, if you can eat it, you can race it. John McGee had the fastest car.
It was a cucumber as the body with some orange wheels and the apples as some rims.
There's lessons here in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, an emphasis for 4-H. The car builders use measurements and calculations, all to get things moving.
I thought I could make it faster if it was smaller and it had less weight.
The whole notion of using edible vehicles to teach nutrition sends a great message to these 4-Hers. These kids have heard their whole lives not to play with their food. Well, now they get to break that rule big time.
Before the racing starts, the kids build their derby cars. They use bamboo skewers, rubber bands, glue, and any fruit or vegetable they'd like. But some culinary combinations work better than others.
We've had big squash cars and little grape wheels or little kernels of corn. So we have to talk about the dynamics of how cars roll and how axles work. So they do have to do a little research before they build.
4-H agent Tanya Bain says the lunchbox derby racing encourages healthier eating.
And it's also a good way to introduce fruits and vegetables that perhaps they've not tried before, because they go to the grocery store with their parents and they're super excited to pick out what they think is going to be good for building their car. And a lot of kids have used foods they've not seen, turnips and radishes, star fruit and kiwi.
So, if you're hungry for the need for speed, your racing machine may be as close as the grocery store, or hopefully already in your refrigerator. Science, nutrition, and fun. In 4-H, it's how we roll. This is Charles Denny reporting.
Thanks, Charles. 4-H'ers also learn math by measuring the distances their derby cars travel, and they also measure the weight of their cars. That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. Spend part of your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.
AgDay, brought to you by Ram Commercial, America's longest-lasting heavy-duty pickups.